Good evening, willkommen, and Strasvice. We're here with the Last Resort pod, and it's an international flavour, as we've got our friend from Dubai, or West Asia, if you're an academic. Jossy, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Thanks for having us on again, lads.
Yeah, no problem. Is it your third time?
Third time, yeah. Becoming a veteran.
Nice.
Yeah,
I am a veteran of the game.
Whether we had anyone else that's been on for 3 times. I don't think we have. You might be... Spencer and Pep, I think, have been on twice each, so they'll be angry about this.
I consider myself privileged.
To be honest with you, I had a chat with Pep earlier, and I know what he's up to this evening as well. Can you guess what he's up to, Danny?
Carvery?
He is. He's at the Toby's Carvery again. He times it specifically to fit in with our schedule. So yeah, and indeed, in his honour, I bothered to turn up with a haircut this week. So I've made an effort for anyone who is tuning in, or perhaps will join us shortly. Although I do seem to have sort of formed a look that makes me look like a sort of 1930s dictator, which is probably appropriate for whatever reason, just to rule the roost here. But there we go. Yeah, lots to talk about this week, because we I guess almost everyone, as far as I can figure out, has about one transfer. There's not much that's dividing people, so it's kind of an interesting sort of little period. But at the same time, everyone's waning and stop bothering. Is there any point? Our good friend Alan, I don't know if you listened to FML FPL earlier this week, Danny. It's more or less one of the only things I have listened to this week.
Yeah, I have actually, because it was only like I remember laughing because it was like 35 minutes long, wasn't it? It was getting shorter every week.
It was brilliant. Yeah, I reckon it was a good sort of only half an hour. I think Walsh has fully given up. He sounded like he was about to sort of fall over in his sick bed, to tell you the truth. So it's the love of the game has gone, but hopefully you can stay with us anyway this evening.
They're on the beach a little bit, aren't they, to be fair?
They are, yeah. But do you know what? I'm keen to get him back on and do a sort of post-mortem type situation with him, or a preview or something like that. It was good fun. Did you catch that one, Jossy? Yeah, actually, no, I'm not going to ask a question like that, because if you say no, then that'll be a really bad...
No, actually, I did. I've cut all the shows, to be honest.
Oh, not
there we go.
And I'm not just saying that.
There we go. Well, there we are. It's our privilege to bring in a fan of the show, something like that. Anyway, these bits, by the way, are basically just to give everyone a chance to warm up, recognize that YouTube notifications have hit and burst, or whatever it is. So if you are just joining us, share it with whoever you humanly can, shout it out the window, send it via WhatsApp to any inappropriate work groups, whatever it is that you need to do, and we will take your likes and subscribes very warmly. All right, I'll kick off and just show a little bit about what we got up to. Seems an appropriate thumbnail this week to have Wissa and Mbuemo there. Actually, just on that, I was a bit. I don't know. I just very quickly, I found that a bit disappointing last week. I was kind of. I turned on. I did my usual thing. I avoided a day and a half of football, which is classic my approach. And then sort of Brentford relentlessly attacked the Manchester United goal. And, one dodgy assist, which, to be honest with you, when I was watching it, I thought, oh, that's not going to get given, is it? So, yeah, what can you do? But did you captain Mbuemo last week, Jossy?
Yeah, I did. Very disappointing.
Yeah, it was a tricky one, wasn't it? And Danny, you were a Marmouche man.
Yeah, horrible.
That was painful, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. It's not often this season I've not regretted decisions many times. I usually go into weeks, pretty happy with my process, and I did what I did, and it could never be any different. So I wouldn't have ever done anything different, I guess. Although I think with longer to think, maybe I wouldn't. I was trying to think about my process a little bit going into the week, and to be fair, I think the big things were, like, I was trying to think of the teams that, first of all, had a decent rest and also had some motivation and also had a good fixture. And City did tick all those boxes. And it was like Friday night, they'd had a week, they'd had a week off. They were fresh and so on. And I was a bit worried about Brentford with the short turnaround. But still, it's just it's not like me to pick a Man City player. It's not like me to pick a Man City player. I never trust them. I never rely on them. It's just, and you should never rely on them. And it was, I don't know. So it was torture going into that Brentford game when I saw the United lineup. I mean, I've not seen that game, and I'm trying to. This is a bit of copium, but I'm hoping that, I guess, maybe at least part of the reason that Bumo didn't go off was I did say two things I was happy about this week. Was I did say that we had a decent left-hand side in terms of Shaw and Amas and stuff, and I think, but I haven't seen the game, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it. And I also did say that I fancied Cucurella to do well against Salah, which I've just caught up on the game today, and that worked out well as well. So yeah, a bit of copium, but terrible decisions.
I believe you said that Cucurella would do anything, including potentially grab Salah's balls, and I'm pretty sure that he did do that. According to So Cucurella has, these things are fine. Yeah, everyone's allowed to have their own kinks. He's a big ball grabber in terms of defending things. So yeah, that's good for him. I'm going to avoid that line of conversation because it could go anywhere. Also I think we'll debate this a bit later on. But there is still a bit of me. I don't know about you guys, but when I watch Brentford with Sade, or Sade. Is it the same as the 80s singer? Maybe, I don't know. But he does detract a little bit in some ways, and then he gives in others, right? So you know that they're going to completely pummel the opposition and properly attack and that sort of thing. But there is an element, isn't it? When he does well, when he's in on the goals, it's actually it's a bit frustrating, really, to watch Brentford from that point of view. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. I should say hello to... Wow, it's an interesting atmosphere in the chat. I'm going to say hello first of all to FPL Heisenberg. I've seen you moonlighting around the analytics chats, Heisenberg. So you are a man that knows, and we're glad to have you in here. Julian gets straight to the point. He's like, "Yeah, overall ranks." so there you go. And despite what it says in the chat, me not looking at the rank doesn't necessarily mean that it's terrible. I just don't know. But I'm guessing it's all right. I'm not an idiot. Unfortunately, you find a way to know. Actually, just before we kick off properly, Jossy, generally we haven't sort of checked in with you for a while. How is the season going for you, Jen? Is it as planned?
Can I be specific?
Have reasonable. You can do, because I mean I don't know very much.
We'll do ranks.
Be
explicit. Yeah, be explicit.
Okay, well, to satisfy Julian, it's not going too bad, to be honest. I'm quite happy. I'm up to 19k at the moment. I had a small green arrow this week, a little bit disappointed. This week particularly, I did the safe move of Saka to Bumo, but I had a real hankering to want to replace Rashford with Bowen, which is going to take me a -4. And I committed to it in the end, dumping Sarr on the bench. So it paid off. Bowen actually paid for a hit, whereas Bumo didn't. Elsewhere in the team, I benched Martinez over Raya, which really frustrated me. I think if I'd have gone the other... in hindsight, if I'd have thought a little bit more about the very strong potential for mass rotation of Arsenal, I'd have been wrong, but I'd have got lucky and put Martinez in net probably. But in hindsight, I backed double Arsenal defence, and that let me down badly. I had KDB from a couple of weeks ago, and he was bust as captain, but I'm not going to lie. Yeah, he was bust as captain before I brought Bumo in, right from the game updating. But I just stayed a little bit safe and boring, went with the EO play, figured Bumo was a good pick anyway. And to be honest, 4 goals, it looks like the right decision, but it just didn't come off for Bumo. But yeah, all in all, small green this week, and I'm doing pretty well.
No, that's good. I was telling Danny earlier this week, I received a couple of messages from people asking why I didn't captain De Bruyne. And I to be honest with you, he was probably about 4th or 5th on my list, something like that, really, to be honest with you, because he's in there, and I'm, it was a reasonable decision at the time, because as back then it was, as you say, in advance of game week 33, I think, wasn't it? Something like that. And his minutes were looking a little bit better and so on. But the trust for captaincy, personally, isn't really there. So, kudos to people who went with that. But, the game since, he's still not taking particularly many corners and that sort of thing. He's not, obviously, we don't think he's likely to have penalties, although that's to be determined. And I don't know, it wasn't there for me, but we'll see if. But yeah, some people did. A lot of people were getting him in late and then captaining him instantly, weren't they? So that probably hurt us in here anyway. Last kind of word before I kind of get onto the first proper slide. In terms of rank, I'm just going to mention this because no one else will give us credit, and we're all in the son of a gun SKLW team, which have stormed through to the semi-finals of the Europa League, which is hopefully in the final. Got a bit of a lead going into that. But in our mini league, and I should just say this now, is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if either of you have noticed it, but I mean, there's 16 managers in there, and at least 10, if not more, are a top 50k. And at least, I think the last time I looked, the top 3 were around the top 1k. So it is really quite a significantly difficult league to get. So
honestly,
if you're mid-table in that, you're all right, you know.
Well, I was going to say that I'm doing really well in most of my mini leagues, and it's the one mini league where I'm mid-table, and it's
ridiculous.
It's a tough crowd.
Yeah,
it's a tough crowd.
So I'm just looking at it now, and it's an 18-person league, and I'm 1.6k. I'm 1.6k, and I'm third.
Well, yeah, goes to show. So yeah, we're doing all right. We're doing all right. Right, I think we should start with this. I mean, to be honest with you, this week, this is how I see it anyway. People broadly are either almost everyone has 1 or 2 transfers, something like that. Some people are coming off of wildcard and perhaps are in a better position to kind of roll this week, but a lot of people are possibly considering one move, and a lot of them are considering moving on one of these strikers. So I don't know if we want to kind of just give a quick stock check as to what we think of these options. This is the popular wildcard. What is it? Wildcard 30-31 lineup, isn't it? These 3 strikers. So a lot of people in here are going to be considering possibly moving one of these on, if not several. Some will be listening for a leak, you know, to see if Marmouche is still starting for the next couple of games. Quite annoying for game week 37, but this week you tend to think it's okay. So I don't know if we want to start off. I mean, Danny, would you, if you had these 3 and you had 1 transfer, for example, would you be interested in moving any of them on?
Short answer is no. No, I don't think so. I've got a bit of a dilemma, which we'll come to. That's similar, but it has its differences, which makes it makes it a little bit different, I think, for me. But no, I mean, City the first kickoff, so I guess unfortunately we have to wait for leaks, which I hate as much as everyone else, by the way. But yeah, that's probably another conversation. I've heard people calling for the deadline to move forward to the first kickoff, which I think would be an absolute disaster. It would be a terrible decision to do that. But yeah, you can debate that with me if you want. But we've got to wait for leaks. So I'd be really shocked if Marmouche is not starting. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. So, and obviously they've got Southampton, so it is what it is. Obviously, I won't be going near him with the captaincy again, to be honest. But that's one way you just leave it and let it happen, because he could still easily just score a hat-trick. Isak, I didn't catch all of the Newcastle game on the highlights. But yeah, definitely, I'm just not worried about him either, because he's just unbelievable, isn't he? It's just ridiculous. And then yeah, you've got Mateta. He is the weak. I mean, a lot of people are a bit fed up with Mateta, understandably so, because obviously he's been getting 60 minutes, 70 minutes, 75 minutes every week, it must be frustrating. But I just see it as, obviously this is a very good fixture for Palace, probably Mateta in particular. And you're still swapping him for guys who, I mean, who are you swapping him for? There's Wissa, obviously, and Wissa is really good, but Wissa's still, he's still basically what, a 70-minute player, 80-minute player. Has he been getting 90 minutes a lot recently, has he?
Yeah, he has, yeah.
Okay, so that's fair enough. I mean, Wissa is very good, but generally I lean on the side of don't take good players out with good fixtures when you can roll a transfer instead, which will be very powerful next week. But if you chase him, maybe. So there's probably other conversations there. So Jossy's probably good to ask, because I don't know if you own him, Jossy, and you're 19k, whatever, and you're looking for 10k. There is an opportunity there. It's a really tough one, isn't it? Because you can be in a really powerful position next week with 2 transfers. I don't buy this stuff, by the way, about like, use the transfers now because there's only 3 weeks left and rolling isn't as good. It doesn't work like that. I mean, 2 transfers next week is very good because you still don't know what could happen. You could put yourself in a really strong position next week. But I can understand it from that point of view. If you've got a really strong squad and you do want to go on someone like Wissa, because Brentford and Wissa feel so good at the moment, don't they? Or Sade, for example, I suppose, haven't we? I've never owned Wissa in my life, which is surprising. So basically, who else is there? Yeah, I don't know. So basically, I sort of lean towards just keep Mateta, but Wood and Evan Nilsson, I guess.
Yeah,
but Forest could have they recently.
I was going to say you haven't mentioned one of my favourites this week. We're going to go. I'm not going to talk this through now, Danny, but to flash the next screen, I'll come back to it. But these are broadly some of the options.
Yeah, Cunha as well. Yeah, Cunha. I do like
looking
Cunha.
at, and a really good one as well, I think. But yeah, Jossy, you're in a position where you have all of these three, and now you are somewhat famous around our circles for being something of a trigger-happy manager, but like, or a get ahead of the curve manager, depending on how you look at it. What's your lean here? I mean, Mateta has disappointed on the whole, hasn't he? I mean, managers who picked him and weren't really good managers like Danny and I and picked Eze. Been found wanting. It's been really difficult for you.
Yeah. But Joe Pedro's working out well, though.
Oh, that was a low blow, but very, very correctly put in there. We've had a bumpy ride with him. I think, obviously, I'm trying to think what happened after that wild card. I think I didn't play him, then got 16 points or something, 13, and then he got a red card. So absolutely bizarre. But that has been a pain in the ass as well. So what do you think? Go ahead.
Well, so I have all three of these strikers, and reiterating what Danny said, Isak's fine for now. He's staying. Marmoush, actually, I know there's a lot of talk about Haaland coming back, and I know that he hasn't been great in terms of returns, at least lately. But I think he's still been doing a job for the team. And I seem to recall that last time Haaland was playing, he was probably doing better. I actually think he would benefit with Haaland's return. He's not doing well out on the right. But then there's another topic, which is potentially if he were to become more central, he may hurt De Bruyne, Haaland coming back. That's a concern. But let's park that and go on. You had something to say.
No, I was going to say, there's theories, aren't there, that he would push him deeper, or that one of them would lose out and that sort of thing. Actually, just to throw a scenario in, because I think we all like, don't we, to be sort of mentally zoned and prepared when it comes to kind of deadline and so on. If you do hear Marmoush is benched at the weekend, which seems pretty unlikely,
I'd sell him.
Would he go?
Yeah,
he would. Okay.
So touching on the original point, I am really keen on Wissa. He is a player, like Danny said, I haven't owned an awful lot. I have owned him.
Too.
But I suppose Bumo's often the go-to. And to be honest, I think I've undervalued him too much in the past. But he's been really consistent. His numbers are great. I suppose he's not on penalties, but no, I think he's a great pick. Looking at a couple of mini leagues, to be honest, he's a threat in mini leagues that I wouldn't mind covering off. That's a side issue. But I am tempted by Wissa. And that would involve moving on Mateta. It's just, he has been disappointing, but Spurs are so obliging that it just doesn't, it feels like the kind of transfer that could burn you. Because he could certainly deliver against Spurs.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, we're podding, aren't we? Before the Spurs. Well, actually, but Spurs game's tomorrow, isn't it? and they're playing inside the Arctic Circle, I believe. I'm sure that I've read that somewhere. So that will have a little bit of a knock-on effect if they have an easy time of it and they're able to rest players and that sort of thing. It seems fairly unlikely. It's going to be a reasonable chat. Don't they have a weird pitch, Bodo Glimt, or something like that? So it's one of those slightly awkward situations for them. So it might be difficult. But yeah, that will have a bit of an impact. But yeah, I think. But aside from, so Mateta is a possible sell for you, even despite the good fixture. But it's more.
He is.
Yeah, and the other two. Then
It's to the point that you made that
yeah.
I am a bit trigger happy, and I do like to push for that next. And I was actually having a discussion with another friend earlier today about. Actually, it's funny how often you buy that better player, you want that. Play with the better fixture, but it's relatively sideways move, and the number of times that it's a waste of a transfer. Like Danny said, selling good players to buy other good players, it's so often doesn't pay off here.
Well, actually, because I mean, one thing that will come up when Danny and I actually maybe we all three own him, but something that will come up a bit later on is a scenario where if you bring someone reasonable in, you would have to bench, let's say potentially someone like a Rodgers or a Sarr, and it is that's quite an awkward conundrum, isn't it? Because for example, that Sarr, I think he racked up near 1 XGI, didn't he, against was it Forest? I don't remember now. It was earlier this week, wasn't it? And by all means could have had a really pretty hefty return, and of course he can do it. But he is a little bit less consistent and reliable than Eza, so that is quite a tricky decision.
At the moment, I'm benching Sarr whether I sell Mateta or not, which, or at least I think I am. It is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just see, because it's an interrelated conversation, really. To bring up these kind of candidates, I suppose, really, then in a team like yours, Jossy, and I suppose to a lesser extent, both of all of us here, whether the upside on these players is worth moving for this week, or whether to allow an extra transfer and potentially one of them for the following week. I think it's tricky, isn't it? Because 3 of them I'm going to say something that Danny's going to get upset with me for. Best entry point. Sorry, apologies. I will.
Not that kind of pod, Rich.
Yeah, I know. We're not. It's too professional here. I like the early stuff with Stu. That pep talk guy. And when we're on Skype and that sort of thing and stitching it together. So 3 of them quite attractive this week. One of them absolutely fine this week, but of course a bit more appealing possibly next week. Danny, you're a bit more neutral, possibly, because I suspect you're slightly less trigger happy than Jossy and I this week. So how do you evaluate these options in front of you? Is it worth, for example, stashing because of the potential of Watkins later on, or do you like these? I mean, you can go through them one by one if you wish.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to say, obviously, I got massively wrong with that comment on Wiss's minutes. I didn't realise how incredible they'd been for quite some
really
long.
Good. I know I'm surprised as well. I only picked up on that earlier this week.
Well, this is it. It just shows you I do narrow my decision process and thought process often, and so I think that can help, but it can also be an issue sometimes. But it takes an awful lot for me, you see, for a striker to pique my interest enough who isn't on penalties, especially someone who historically and previously was more of a 70-minute player for a long time. It really.
Oh my God.
Really puts me off.
I just looked at it again.
I know. I just went through and I put it this way. I was clicking on every game and I couldn't find one that didn't get to 90 minutes. So I was like,
hasn't missed a minute since game week 19.
That's amazing, isn't it? That's absolutely ridiculous.
I mean, there's no excuse. But I guess hasn't Thiago been injured? And I don't know if Sharda was injured I don't know. But anyway, yeah. So just scrap that. But like I say, it just goes to show, like I say, how much it takes for me to think about these certain players, because obviously this season for so long we've had Chris Wood there, who is on penalties and it's been good minutes and been bonus king, and then you've got Cunha as well. So when I look at those two, I mean, Cunha's got penalties I think, or at least likely, probably most of the time.
Yeah.
I think so.
And obviously just ridiculously incredible bonus potential, and someone who's always been a sort of 90-minute man for me. I love Cunha. You just feel so good having Cunha in your team because he's just such a magical player. By the way, I desperately wish Man United would sign him because what an incredible footballer. He's playing a different game. He's one of those guys who's playing a different game to everyone else.
Yeah.
He's just playing a different game. He's not operating on the same level at all. He was just born to play football. So, I mean, there's some incredible options, isn't there? I mean, like I say, I always lean towards that side of it's really strong position to have 2 transfers. It's especially going into 37, 38, where we're going to get rotation, random things are going to happen. We're going to get rests and injuries and all sorts. And I'm definitely faced with that dilemma, but not with a striker. So we'll talk about my team in a bit. But I also do really like Watkins, but then I also, that has changed a little bit last week with that substitution at 70 minutes, and Marlon obviously looks good. I mean, Watkins is so amazing, and you want him to be there, but there's obviously a bit of a problem there with the manager, maybe, because it's such a strange thing from a man management point of view when Rashford's been there and Watkins has been unhappy for so long to take him off. It just seemed like Emery's so ruthless, isn't he? Mm. So
unless he's still not 100%, is there something there? Because with Rashford out, they don't have a backup now for him, other than maybe bringing Marlon in. So maybe they're protecting him a little bit. But then the game's there to be won.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's almost. I mean, again, this is not from an informed position, but I don't know if there's a little bit of a game style kind of play about it as well, because you see so many. Because Watkins is an unbelievable player, right? An unbelievable striker in many ways. But one of those ways where he's not necessarily is running through one-on-one and those sort of chances where he's got time to think. And the number of times I see him miss those kind of chances. But also at the moment, the number of times I see Villa create those chances. So even watching back the game, earlier, and what I'd heard about Rodgers, it didn't look great from him from a fantasy perspective, and he was out on the wings and stuff. Well, he still actually created 2 really good chances, and probably one of them was probably the best chance that they had. And certainly that one was for Watkins. Again, Rodgers just puts the number of times I see those balls come through. And obviously think about Tielemans, the type of player that Tielemans is, who's been absolutely incredible this season, by the way. But the number of times he picks up the ball in a tight situation in midfield, turns, looks up and looks straight for the killer pass and does it perfectly. And it's always those line breaking passes where it's one-on-ones. And maybe that's why he loved Rashford so much, because Rashford was exactly that sort of player who could beat the player for pace, beat them on the line, is confident one-on-one, tucks things away. Whereas Watkins is a sensational player, but maybe it's for a different type of team where you want that guy who just takes, occupies the whole defense, runs to the flags in the corners, holds up the ball, he does everything you want. So maybe Emery's a little bit more frustrated with Watkins, where they still are creating all those brilliant chances through Rodgers and Tielemans especially, but you just need someone clinical on the end of it to tuck it away one-on-one, and Watkins has just not been doing that. So maybe he's getting a bit pissed off with him and taking him off, because Marlon has looked good as well in that regard, where he's looked sharp. I think, didn't he hit the bar or something when he came on?
Yeah. With a couple of really good chances. I think people have often have forgotten, perhaps in the last year or so, just how good Watkins is with space in front of him, in terms of, him coming in off the left and being able to beat his man, potentially supply others and that sort of thing. I think of the classic kind of Watkins finish as one where he's able to just come in a little bit off the left, beat one man or something like that, and then glide it into one of the corners. And I haven't seen that type of goal from him that often, because he's obviously been converted a little bit more into a hold-up player, which he can do, and someone who can run through the middle and that sort of thing. But it does kind of feel like that an element of his game has been taken away just a little bit.
He's very good in the air as well.
I
haven't seen much of that recently. So that puts me off a little bit. And to be honest, a little bit is a lot right now, isn't it? Because look at the margin. Look at the margins we're talking about with these players. I mean, there are so many brilliant players to choose from.
And for me, I think.
Yeah, I was going to pass.
No, I was just briefly going to say that if I was considering Watkins, which I am, I've got an eye on 37 now. I think that would be the entry point.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's it. That's twice.
Yeah, I did.
No, I mean, I was going to say, I think my gut feel is if I was going to, with these 4 on the screen at the moment, I lean towards the 2 on the bottom, to be honest. I mean, I love Chris Wood.
Yeah.
But Chris Wood has just felt like, I don't know what you think, Rich, but obviously he's one of those guys who kind of, his appeal diminishes as the weeks in the season diminish, because he's always, for so long in the season he was that one you could just leave there, feel confident about. He was taking his chances, he was on form, he was getting 90 minutes, he was on penalties. Whereas now you think, the numbers, the underlines are not great, and Forest are not great, and I don't really want to make a bet there when I don't see much of a ceiling. Whereas the other guys, I can see a ceiling. So I lean towards the bottom 2. But what about you, Rich?
Yeah, I think I'm going to try and be a little bit more bold and decisive than usual, because I can shy away and wobble around with these answers sometimes a little bit. It's really interesting, as you say. I needed no probably like you, Danny. I needed no excuse really to consider Chris Wood. He's been so good to us, and I know you shouldn't get emotionally attached, so to speak, to players and all of that kind of stuff, but him and Brian basically have been everything that's gone well this season. Well, actually, to some extent, Cunha as well. I think I owned him when he got sent off, and Danny, you didn't have him for that little patch of time, which was maybe why one bad taste in my mouth. But just watching him lately, he does seem pretty cumbersome, doesn't he? To be honest with you, lately the fluidity isn't there, and I know. What's difficult is you look at the fixture this week and then next week. I mean, obviously, I've got my own misgivings about my own team, West Ham, next week. But to be honest with you, this week, and one of my deciding factors between these strikers a little bit is how I see those games going in the next few weeks. And I feel with Forest, obviously, we know about the kind of nerviness and that sort of thing. I can't help but feel that of all of the, of the 3 that you might pick this week, there is one striker who's more likely to be involved in games that I think, when I look at the fixtures, any one of his fixtures could be 3-2 every week, which is likely to be Wissa, right? I look at those fixtures, and he's got, what is it? Obviously Ipswich this week, Fulham, and then Wolves final week. Those instinctively feel like games where it's quite plausible that Brentford might not win them all, but they feel instinctively like goal games. Like there is going to be that. With Nottingham Forest, I can easily see a scenario where they're quite happy, even this week, settling up at 2-0. I mean, that's, again, there's nothing to base that on greatly, but just instinctively that feels like that's more likely to happen with them at the moment. And the people around him are getting beyond Chris Wood a bit more than even usual, I would say. He doesn't look like he's likely to be the first man to the ball and that sort of thing. So there is a little bit of reservation. I mean, I hope he does well, actually. I'm not likely to pick him. There's two people here I'm choosing between, and he's not actually one of them. He's 3rd on my list this week. So yeah, Wissa and Cunha are preferred to him this week. If I had 2 moves, I would be more even. I'd be very happy to get them both in. And a little word, I think, on Wolves, actually, when we look at them later on, you've still got that thing that Danny's mentioned. I mean, the swagger is still very much there at the moment. When he opens up the body for the kind of passes to the other attacking midfielders, I'm sure we've all seen it on Match of the Day highlights, where he just opens up that shot, drops that little shoulder a little bit, and it looks just so classy, doesn't it? There's something so perfect about the way he does it, and it's just exciting to watch. So I feel excited about those 2 players at the bottom. They're in such good form. The minutes probably there. I have talked to someone who is a Wolves fan this week, and I know we have our own caveats on that issue, but they seem pretty convinced that he's fine for the remaining fixtures. They're not concerned about his minutes. I've seen people say things on that score. But yeah, that's so at the moment, I think it's very much between the bottom 2. Watkins, the interesting thing, I don't know whether this is like this for you, Danny, or Jossy, but I'm not entirely sure the permutations at the moment. For example, if I bought someone like Wissa or Cunha, I can afford to get Watkins next week if I want to, buy Marmoush or Isak if I wanted to. And that's playing on my mind a little bit because, of course, then that blocks something else. So if you want to do something else in midfield, for example, or if De Bruyne becomes a problem or something like this, which is quite plausible because the deadline for City in 37 is really annoyingly behind the deadline, isn't it now? It's like, isn't it Tuesday or something? And there's the Friday deadline, so it's quite awkward to project City fixtures, the City minutes, that sort of thing. So yeah, it is pretty tricky. Jossy, where do you lean on it? I know that you're going through the same mental somersaults that I am, probably.
Yeah. Well, as I said before, I think I've parked the idea of Watkins now till 37. I'll consider again. The early sub was a little bit off-putting. Touching on Wood briefly, one of the things I want to say is that it felt like earlier in the season when he was relentless, that every time you got a goal notification for Wolves, you kind of knew it was Wood, or he'd maybe have assisted it. And it feels like his percentage involvement has dropped off significantly now, partially because other players are contributing a lot more. A lot of the midfielders are chipping in, but he doesn't seem to be on the end of everything now. And it does feel a little bit like Forrester limping over the line a bit. So, yeah, I think I said to you earlier, Rich, that I have a bit of an adversity, or I try to avoid making a transfer where it's heavily dependent on the result of one fixture. Because when there's a couple of options, but you're heavily reliant on Wood delivering against Leicester, the second he planks against Leicester, you're going to be really gutted about that transfer then. And you're going to be thinking, I've made the wrong decision, because he has to return big against Leicester or else, really. Not to say that he can't deliver in those other games, but that's the money fixture. And I do feel like Wissa and Cunha can probably deliver in each of those three games. Maybe not all three, but there's potential there. That they're both in great form. I think on Wissa, you touched about the minutes earlier, Danny. I think a year or so ago, maybe even at the start of this year, Wissa always felt like he was part of the squad. He was an option. He was a very regularly used option, but now it feels like he's the main man. Like he's definitely stepped up, I think, since last season. He is the main man. He's the 90-minute man. He's got excellent stats. I think I have had a bit of a blind spot in not picking him. So it's tough. Because, again, there is the real value of having two transfers. But again, briefly touching about Mateta, it's the minutes. It's the fact that he could just get 65. And he could retain 65. But as Danny likes to say, pick players who play. I can't remember what the exact quote is, but pick players who play minutes. What's that?
Pretty much it. You pretty much got it.
Yeah.
Pick players who play, yeah.
Pick players who play football. And you know that these two on the bottom, Cunha and Wissa, they're going to play 90 minutes. So I am very tempted, but it's hard to split them.
Yeah, very difficult. I'm just going to say one more thing about, especially, I suppose this is more a Wissa comment than anything else. Wissa comment than anything else. One is FPL related and one isn't. I'll start with the FPL one. I've seen people who are have been asking other people or saying their plans, and they've said they've been considering selling Cunha for Wissa or Wood this week. I think that's absolutely mental. I just can't imagine any scenario in which I would consider selling Cunha this week. I don't know how. I mean, good, go ahead. I really hope you do, but that just seems absolutely crazy. This week. The second comment is just that, and this you just sympathise with me as a long-suffering West Ham fan. I know that one of you here is just celebrating a title win, the other is possibly on the brink of a European trophy. Fingers crossed. I saw a headline earlier this week. West Ham turned down a second opportunity to sign Johan Wissa this summer, and I'm like, because he's too old, apparently. He's too old. He's 28.
28,
He's too old. I was like, they signed Fulkrug, obviously, who, by the way, it has looked pretty good recently. But I just had to get that frustration out there and that sort of thing. Danny, I'm curious, just before we kind of look at The one thing I want to talk about after this is the knock-on effect on Game Week 37 captaincy, actually, because I do think that people need to look at the best captain for 37, and obviously Watkins is probably someone who's quite high up that list for some people. Just before we do, though, I mean, how are you not? Are you considering any of these now or next week, or are you more focused on the midfield then?
I've got my eye on Palmer for captain next week.
I was good because it's Watkins and Palmer are two very strong options, aren't they?
Yeah, so that's another reason why I'm not giving these strikers probably enough thought yet. And I'm glad we've talked about them more, actually, because it's really there are some real opportunities here. And only a few weeks left. And I just want to say, like, I was just thinking about some things you were talking about a bit more about these strikers, but like with Chris Wood, it just shows you the variance a little bit as well, I think. And in terms of how things can change, because obviously everything he touched was turning to gold for a long time, and I don't think that was like luck or anything like that. It was, he did it for over a year. But there was a moment on Monday when he actually, I don't know if you remember the chance, but he took it down beautifully, and then he just needed one more shot to and he actually it was a pretty good effort. It was actually almost perfect, but it just clipped the defender's leg. I don't know if it was Lacroix or someone like that. Just clipped his leg and went a couple of feet wide. And it was the exact chance that he's buried every time this season. And it just shows this tiny little touch, and suddenly, his one big chance has gone, and he's blanked. And that's why it's just a little bit too much on the line with Wood. But also, you want to get on these teams that are feeling good. That Wolves are definitely that team at the moment. Wolves look really, really good because everything's just suddenly clicked with their manager, with the team, with the way they're set up. They've got great midfielders. They've got great defenders like Agbadou, and Sarr's already a great keeper, and they've got actually a really good team. And they're one of these teams, I think they know that they've not been as good as they could have been this season, and they want to show a little something now. They were really good against City again. They won. I know they had good fixtures before that, but you can only win what's in front of you. So Wolves are a team that obviously feel good generally, and I like that. There's no reason to think that they're just going to suddenly dip. And I'm just looking at their fixtures as well. Just it's worth noting that they've got 3 decent fixtures. They've got two very good fixtures, but the worst fixture on paper is Palace away. But Palace away is on the Tuesday after the cup final, so that's pretty good because obviously they're either going to be knackered and upset, or they're going to be knackered and hungover because they won. I would think that if Palace win that cup final, that'll turn into a really good fixture probably for Cunha on the Tuesday. So. Yeah, and obviously Brentford just never let you down. They always feel good, and I just want to say on Worcester, like I've always liked the fact that he's like best mates with Bumo. I remember watching this video on Sky Sports. They did, and it showed a really good chemistry between them. They both know each other's games so well. They're both really good friends, and they're both fearless kind of guys, which I always talk about. And Worcester's always struck me as one of those guys who he just doesn't give a shit. He just gets his head down, drills it, and he puts away chances. So he is one of the main men now. I have to say, Jossy. Obviously, Bumo is still the main man because he is the. But you're right, he is now there. He's a mainstay now. So, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm more towards what you guys have said than I was at the start of the pod already. Obviously, putting myself in your position, I don't own Mateta, so I've not really had to think about it. And I still like Rolling, but those two guys at the bottom especially are so good.
Really good, yeah.
Yeah, I would. I'd be interested.
Another thing that makes me think as well is that everybody almost is going to have Bumo this week. He's going to be very heavily captained. You almost don't have a Brentford player with just one Bumo. So if there are going to be a few goals at Brentford, you kind of need the two to benefit from that, I think.
Do you know what you say too? I think I should bring this up at this point because we did touch on it a bit earlier. Well, I mean, I'm guessing you guys have watched highlights from the last few games, or maybe even one of the recent fixtures. And Kevin Schade has been playing a fair bit lately. I actually need to get his minutes up whilst we're talking this through. But did you like the impact that he brings for Mbeumo and Wissa, or does he hamper it? I mean, kind of what's your thoughts there? I was quite surprised actually to see that Schade has actually. I mean, he's got 134 points this season. It's quite surprising, isn't it? He's got 10 goals, 4 assists. Because I remember them saying, I don't know where I've read this earlier this week, but they're the only team in the league that have got 3 double-digit goal scorers.
I had no idea he had that many, but he's such a streaky player, isn't he? That's what he's always
Very
struck me. He just he
Yeah.
comes along every now and again, and he comes along every now and again and just absolutely.
But I mean,
Yeah,
even
so-
just before I let you on, sorry, I'm just going to reel off his minutes for the last sort of I don't know, 8 or 10 or something like that. Is, you know, since game week 28, for example, 90, 84, 90, 90, 90, 86, 67, 71. That's Sharda's minutes. So that's not bad either. And he's 5.1. So people will be thinking about it for someone like I don't know who might you sell this week, but there's, you know, you might go early and sell a Palace mid or something like that. But yeah, what do we think about his impact and even him as an asset?
I think he's a very good option. If you need an enabler, there's a part of me that thinks that at this stage of the season, I want to go for the big upside picks, and I know that sounds a little bit daft to say considering he's just braced, but I was just spying his returns, and yeah, he's got 3 in the last 2, but then he hadn't returned at all since game week 25. So as Danny said, he's a bit streaky. Now, I don't know. I've not watched enough of them as to whether his role has changed in the last couple of games or whether he's just spiked some returns. I think if you need that enabling pick, he's a good option, but I don't feel I want to use one of my last 3 transfers there.
Do you know what's weird about him, by the way, is that I've just been eyeing up his minutes, etc. He's never returned in a game that he's played 90 minutes. He which is really weird. All of his kind of returns, he's come off at sort of 60, 70 minutes with like a brace or something. But whenever he's playing well and scoring, he gets taken off. It's a really weird kind of conundrum. Sorry, Danny, I'll let you come in there.
No, it's all right. I was just going to make a small point. I'm just looking at the returns and the fixtures as well. Just thinking about the fixture more. I think really inspecting the fixtures, in particular this weekend, and obviously that is important when you've only got 3 fixtures left for each of these players. But I think that this could massively backfire, of course. But if I was putting my money on it, that to me is the most readable fixture in terms of how I think it will go in the Brentford Ipswich one, because Ipswich, especially now that they're relegated, you know, they don't really deviate from their approach. They're not going to sit back. They're not going to go tight. They're not going to be cautious. They just go at you. They just run 100 miles an hour, and they throw everything at you. They go for it. And Brentford are exactly the sort of team, especially against the lower. They're sort of the lower. They're bullies, aren't they? You know, sometimes you see them against City or Arsenal, so they set up really cleverly because they've got a great manager set up in a slightly different way, and sometimes frustrate but hit you on the break. Whereas every time they play anyone in the bottom 12, they just go, you want to go toe to toe with us? Fine. You know, you want to punch us? We'll just punch you twice as hard. And you know, I was just thinking that, and then looking back at the last Ipswich game confirms exactly that. It was 4-3. It was 4-3 to Brentford. You know, Boomer got 15 points, Wisser got 10 points, and that's exactly how I would see this sort of game going. And I like that. I like to make that on a fixture that, you know, it's a bit like when going into that free hit when it was Newcastle were at home. They were the fixture where you just knew against Ipswich as well, actually, funnily enough. But that was the fixture that you really felt safe in terms of knowing which way it would go. So yeah, that actually makes it even more appealing for me looking at this week.
I can see that. It does again a nice opportunity. I mean, it's interesting that none of us have owned him this season as well. Is that what you said, Jossy? Just to check.
Yeah, I haven't this year.
It's really fascinating. But I'm just going to leave this comment from Matt Bugsby up for a second as well, because that's quite a good point about Sharda playing as a second forward and pushing Mbeumo a bit wide and that sort of thing. So that's a useful point, a bit tactics dependent. I think your point, Danny, about the fixtures is really interesting, because I was having exactly the same thought. I'm just going to skip forward a few. What's a good one to go with? Let's go with this one for the sake of argument. The Wolves fixtures, for example, I'm like I say, I'm really, really interested in Cunha this week. I really like him as an option. But what's weird about looking at those games is they are the kind. Okay, Palace is a funny one because of where it's positioned in relation to the cup. But with Wolves, as you say, I can't quite as easily read the outcomes of that. It's possible, for example, that Brighton win that game 2-1, isn't it? For example, It's quite plausible. Equally, I could easily see Wolves winning it as well. It's quite a tricky one to read. And when you want to go in and sign someone, ideally you want that first fixture fillip, but then with the good fixtures thereafter, and that's quite good from a kind of Wissa point of view. So yeah, it is tricky. But I still think if I was we can do that now. We can do the classic pod sort of ordering. If you were picking this week, where are you leaning at the moment, Jossy? Because I will tell you that for me, well, to make it just clear on this one, Wood is out of the running for me, unless something drastic happens in terms of his injury. But do you have a lean at this moment in time?
If the deadline was coming in the next half hour and I was going to make the move, I think it'd be Wissa over Cunha.
Oh, exciting! Yeah. Yes, I mean Danny's gonna. I think it'll be easier to talk this through when you have your team up, because obviously you're looking at midfield and that sort of thing as well. But yeah, no, I think that's he's definitely an exciting option this week. But it's between those two at the bottom, isn't it? It's hard. I think what's hard, Danny, is that I'm seeing Cunha a bit more through your eyes as a Manchester United fan recently, because I just thought it's just the immense sort of excitement and pride of having someone like Cunha in your team just reminds me of what it was like for me when we had Payet and someone who you actually pay to watch the game for. To be fair, Wissa isn't that guy. Like, he's a really good player and he's high energy and his finishing has really improved, and people haven't talked about it as much as perhaps they could have done. But yeah, it's that love of the player. We should talk about another attractive proposition to some people this week. I find this one to be difficult because I've got an odd relationship with this player in my team, which is that, I'm pleased I bought him to a point, I suppose, but equally, I never feel comfortable with players like this because I'm already worried about not so much this week, but 37 when we're going in blind and we don't know what's going to happen. Would I rather have had... Weirdly enough, that's the week I'm worried about Rodgers versus KDB. Like, we've had this discussion a few times on this pod. Because, you know what to expect from one and you don't the other. Danny, as someone who's got a step back from this and watched others have KDB during this spell, would you consider or countenance bringing him in? Because there are people who are still considering it. I know for me it's a firm no, actually, strangely enough, even though I owned him. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's just a firm no for me as well. Obviously, I'm a bit worried now. I'm already points behind those people who got him in, so it's a bit like, and obviously I do think he's playing pretty well, and we may well see a bit of a swan song. I think he's pretty pissed off. I think he's a bit shocked that he's been asked to leave, and so he could well be good, but De Bruyne has never been a good pick in FPL to me, to put it bluntly. I know that it's not black and white, and people say, what's that season when he got 19 assists? Okay, there might have been a few times. I've owned him plenty of times, when he's got me points before, and it's funny. Late Riser was talking about it being like aesthetically pleasing points when you see him, and I agree with that. Actually, it always feels a bit special when you get little De Bruyne and you get a double return and full bonus. But he's never been a good pick in FPL because he's overpriced for what he is, for what he offers, and obviously now he's objectively worse really than he's ever been before because he's older. But it just comes down to the fact that for me there are too many other good picks to want to bring De Bruyne in. I think Palmer now, especially the fact that he played really well. We'll talk about Palmer when he comes there. Palmer, for example, is a million miles ahead of De Bruyne as a pick in FPL. It's not even close. That'll be an unpopular statement based on what we've seen recently because Palmer has had a bad spell. But generally speaking, they're not close as assets in FPL. They're not close as what they offer you and what you get. What you get from someone like Palmer, for example, who's guaranteed 90 minutes, guaranteed penalties. I don't think De Bruyne will be on penalties. On all set pieces. Young, fresh, sharp, brilliant, direct, everything you could possibly want. And there are lots of players like that. Obviously, Saka as well. And we've talked about all the brilliant strikers, and we've talked about Watkins and so on. So for me, De Bruyne is just a little bit restrictive in terms of who you can actually go for. Having said all that, of course, as I say, I'm still worried because they've got very good fixtures. Man City have got very good fixtures. De Bruyne is playing pretty well, and I think you're probably pretty safe with him for the next couple of weeks at least, I guess. I've not really looked much into it in terms of this weekend. So you guys can give more insight on that. But no, for me, I'll be much more interested in looking for those other picks, the sort of picks we've just talked about that are guaranteed to play and sharp and on it in 90 minutes. And obviously, yeah, like for me, I'm looking at Palmer, so he's not even in my mind.
What's weird, by the way, is I feel like I should be. I mean, actually, Sir Matt Bugsby says here, arguably he's a perma cap for chasers until the end of the season. I'm going to try and be Matt. We are really overjoyed that you are joining us this week. I'm going to very firmly disagree with you, but yeah, I can see why. I can see the logic behind it. I don't have the balls basically to go through that, even if I was chasing, to be honest with you, or the countenance or the amount of sweat needed. One of the, just to give a bit of a statement against De Bruyne here, I feel I like I said, I got a few messages like, oh, you knew the leak though, didn't you? Why wouldn't you captain him and that sort of thing last week? And it still didn't really seriously enter my head to go through with that, because, you know, I'm never 100% trustworthy of leaks. I'm okay enough to sometimes move things around a bit, but it's very rare that I'll make a transfer on it or something like that if I can avoid it and that sort of thing. But we still, maybe I'm wrong about this, the highlights against Wolves looked pretty good. De Bruyne didn't really get a great deal of chances and involvements, really. You know, he got one, obviously the cutback for the goal, and, you know, great. Obviously, I'll take it. It was, you know, very useful points. But I didn't watch that game and think, oh, you know, he was an obvious captain. I can't believe I missed out on that. Definitely not, you know. So it didn't cross my mind, really. What do you wouldn't bring him in either, Jossy? Another person that owns him.
No, probably not at this stage. I think the time was I brought him in for the double, and to be honest, he was pretty disappointing in the double. But yeah, obviously he's returned this week, and I'm hopeful. I mean, there's a lot of talk that potentially with them wanting to give him the last home game, maybe he misses out the FA Cup. They stick with the same FA Cup team, and then so maybe we get Southampton, maybe we get Bournemouth. If we do, I'm not very hopeful I'll get 38. So you're right, we're going to be playing this game every week now on tenterhooks, waiting for the team sheet to come out. That's not a great place to be, but
I mean, I might sell him next week. I'm going to say that now.
Yeah.
You might
I was going to say I might sell him in 38.
Sorry, Danny.
Sorry, guys. Did you say you might sell him this week?
No, not this week. No. No, because okay, so next week I think it's going to be quite common amongst obviously a few transfers left, but I can see that people might be using next week's transfers potentially with captaincy in mind. And I look at next week and there's two attractive premium players who offer something in the way of captaincy. I mean, Palmer showed a leg basically this week, didn't he? He looked genuinely really kind of good, really on it. You know, that chance where he did that, he hit the inside of the post, didn't he? That lovely one. And then he set, I don't know whether it was setting up the goal or set up something. But, you know, again, he was turning players inside out again. He looked a bit like his old self, basically, a bit of a swagger, that sort of thing. So him and going into next week, him and Watkins are still players I want to keep routes open to them. So I can go De Bruyne, even if I bought a striker this week, and go De Bruyne to Palmer if I wanted to. It does leave me a bit short for the following week, because then you can only get, you know, you've only obviously got one move thereafter and that sort of thing. I mean, Matt Bugsby said it. Yeah, that's not a terrible idea, is it? De Bruyne, Palmer, Saka, captaincy. So if you have a settled squad, it's quite possible. I think for a lot of people, it means they'll have to play Palace players in games that they don't want to. But yeah, it's certainly plausible. So yeah, there's an interesting one. Any other final comments on City assets this week? I'm guessing it's a firm no on the Haaland thing. I know people will want us to talk about it briefly, but
for me, I mean, a friend of mine said, because it was leaked that he was going to be on the bench, and a friend of mine said he probably won't even give him a minute, and he was right, and he probably never had any intention of giving him a minute, because why put him there unless you're going to give him a run out? So I think my assumption would be he'll get some minutes off the bench first. So he's probably a no-go this week. And to be honest, even when he and Marmoush were playing alongside, was he worth the premium over Marmoush at that time? He wasn't tearing it up. Now I know maybe he comes back firing, wants to end the season on a high, but I don't see myself spending the 15 million on him at this stage.
No,
fair point. Hard to argue with that.
I guess, just to play devil's advocate slightly for a second, I agree. I'm not personally interested in Haaland, he's not really been worth the money all season. But the interesting thing about this week, I agree. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't. Maybe we just wanted him to get the experience of being back on the bench, sort of thing. And in terms of the last game, but he does. Just a few things. Is he was on the bench. He has had another week. These things, it's always about the type of injury, and it's one of these things that we don't know. With players, it's really weird, isn't it? With certain players, it's about the type of injury. Some injuries require that you just have a few minutes week after week after week and very slow reintroduction. Some injuries are probably much more straightforward physiologically, and you can just get straight back in. So one slight thing is obviously this is a huge opportunity for people who are engaged and people who are chasing, in that we should get a leak on Saturday, because once again City are the first kickoff, which is really annoying for me, someone like me who doesn't not interested in City picks and doesn't want them, and I don't want people getting leaks. But if there's a leak there, and if he is starting, because I think there's, again, he's had a full week of training after being on the bench, so I think there's a reasonable chance that randomly we do just see him start. I think he probably won't start. I don't think he'll start. But obviously, if he does, suddenly only the engaged managers, people on Twitter, unfortunately, 10 minutes before the deadline, you've got a chance to bring Haaland in against Southampton and captain him. When nobody owns him in the world. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye on, depending on what your position is, etc., etc. But
I mean, weird thing to say. Maybe I'm alone in this, but I even though I have 3 City, I genuinely don't mind if one of those attackers is benched this week and we find out about it. It would actually be quite useful, because if you've got a deep squad this week with someone like Assar or whatever it might be, you don't mind, do you? You don't mind. You take 85, 90 minutes of Assar against whatever it might be, 25, half an hour against these guys. I'd take that on. So yeah,
I thought that.
Projected goals for the next few. We should just give a quick shout out to not only RobT, who's been very kind when we did ask him once, so I should ask again at some point. I'm sure he's okay with it. But also, is it Solioanalytics, Danny? Yeah, I was going to say so well worth mentioning. I think this is they sort of collaborate on putting this together, and they are incredibly useful. Let's be honest. I mean, what caught my eye this week particularly was, immediately was Where Are Wolves, because I wanted to have a look at them, because of course I'm interested in Cunha, and also the fact that Brentford are only just a smidgen behind Nottingham Forest this week was quite appealing as well, because they're generally a little bit more reliable in attack recently as well. Anything stand out to you, either of you, from those projections? You might need to make the screen bigger.
I'll talk for a second while Jossy's having a think, because I haven't looked at these, but I just do want to say, I guess a lot of people maybe not have heard of Solioanalytics, so I'll just shout them out properly. But they're a group of brilliant analytics managers. It's like James, FPL Trout, Sertalp, Jorgen, Spaceman, JC, and Praz now is on the team as well, and doing something. So yeah, definitely follow those guys on all the channels and stuff. They'll be doing loads of I'm sure hopefully we'll have loads of stuff to share with theirs next season. So we'll have to message them as well. But yeah, Jossy, you go while I've been speaking there, because I've not had a chance really to process this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's no huge surprises. City, the clear favourite to score a bunch of goals, 3 goals. That's got to be prime for a captaincy option if we can get the right one. Brentford at 2.2, Forest at 2.3. Those you generally look for fixtures where they projected 2 goals or more. So those are the big 3 fixtures, aren't they? A lot of the others do seem much of a muchness.
Forest are actually quite high, obviously, on both sides. I mean, Forest is a discussion this week. I didn't see, but Murillo went off injured apparently, didn't he? And which is really annoying because I've got Milenkovic and I'm playing him this week, and it's like the one plum fixture on paper where you really want to play Forest defence. I'll be really pissed off. I'll be really pissed off if he's injured because they've actually got the highest clean sheets odds for the week.
Yeah, and clean sheets are going to be thin on the ground this week. It looks.
Yeah,
there's some really poor clean sheet odds.
But yeah,
I'll be honest with you. Another thing, Danny, just a quick one, because I know that you're a Jose Sarr owner. I'm playing him this week, and I was kind of a bit more hopeful that there would be a bigger gap between, like basically Raya and Sarr this week. But there's 0.1 between them, which is a bit rubbish. You may as well take the risk, right? Because of course Sarr's points are, there's graded expected values and all the rest of it. But yeah, that was a bit disappointing as well. And of course, Milenkovic got his facial injury as well. I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch the game, but it sounded like he took a smash to the face, bit of a bloody nose. It's a kind of stick a couple of tampons up their job. Hopefully, am I allowed to say that? Probably. Well, we'll see. Hopefully, hopefully he'll be okay. But it didn't strike me as being one that he's out for. But what can you do? We have to play him now, don't we? Really don't have a choice.
Yeah, I'm playing Sarr as well, and I think it is hard to imagine them getting a clean sheet. But I mean, again, Wolves are playing very well, and Brighton are always so hard to predict. They do tend to score against most teams because they've got a good team, they've got good attacking players. I think this is where it's nice that João Pedro is injured for us because I think he is a big creative force in that team. But Minte's suddenly playing, Minte's playing quite well at the moment, so he's a threat. So, but I think Jose Sarri, he makes a lot of saves, doesn't he? And I also think Wolves, in terms of the models and even the odds, I guess it's this is one of those occasions where it doesn't mean that you're right in going against the odds, but it's probably not caught up too much yet. It's only been Wolves have looked really good basically for like 6-7 games so far. So maybe they're a bit better than all of the odds suggest. But
so Wolves are not on this slide because they're projected to score fewer goals than Brighton.
Well, they're not on this slide because it's a collection of the 3 weeks, and they're generally not great. And I mean, in this week, for example, I do remember looking at the rest of it, and they are. So, for example, we've got Sarr versus Raya, who I'm going to play Sarr over Raya, and it says there Arsenal got a 19% chance of a clean sheet. I think Wolves had something like a 21 or a 22% chance, so pretty low, but still higher than Arsenal. But yeah, as I say, I don't think has it really caught up with Wolves. I mean, I say caught up as if it doesn't mean that we're right about Wolves being really good. It's just what I see at the moment. I think they look really good. You've also, as I say, to what extent has it factored in? Well, I'm sure it factors in, but to what extent have we got that Crystal Palace game for Wolves where it's 3 days after the FA Cup final? I think that becomes a considerably better fixture than it is on paper for them.
Agree.
But yeah, I mean, where are Chelsea actually? So Chelsea is an interesting one, I think, for next week for captaincy, as we've said. So we can see there that Villa are slightly ahead in terms of this projection, and same with City. But Chelsea interests me this week, and that's what I want to talk about. Really, it's what do we think that Chelsea Newcastle game looks like this week? Because I've got a Palmer option basically.
Yeah, that's tricky, isn't it? I mean, it immediately strikes me as being a fairly close game.
Yeah.
It's more of kind of a 1 or 2-1 variety. I don't. It's hard to call that one. What you're in agreement, Jossy?
Yeah, it's a tricky one to bring in Palmer in for. Who would he be coming in for?
Sarr.
So.
Oh, you've got some money stashed, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I don't have De Bruyne.
Good for you.
I mean, anyway, there's a discussion here. Sarr versus it's a tough one for me. It's a bit like the Mateta discussion. Probably lean towards not doing it because you can roll.
Yeah.
But obviously, Palmer is still, he's the second best FPL player in the game. it's just a different thing with him. He's the talisman. Things that goals are likely to go through him. He's everything that Chelsea are in that match. And obviously, Newcastle are a different outfit without Joe Linton. They're not the same team without Joe Linton. So I do think they're more vulnerable. I think I fancy Chelsea for that game, for example. Newcastle just, Joe Linton is such a nightmare for opposition. He's such a handful. He's such a big rum bastard. He just beats the shit out of everyone. when somebody takes over, every battle, every fight, he's at the front line beating the shit out of people every game. All your teammates basically end up looking to him and just being like, every time there's a fight or a battle, it's like, Joe Linton, come over here, mate, help us out. And he's running over, and he's built like a brick shithouse. He's so rum. So when he goes, suddenly you've not got this guy. It's like, how do we go into every battle here without Joe Linton on the pitch? And suddenly you're just looking at Bruno Guimaraes and Harvey Barnes, and everything's a bit more scary all of a sudden. And they just don't look. And they never look half the team without him. It's quite incredible, really. I think they've become a bit too reliant on him. So Chelsea are really on it as well. So there's a discussion there. I think Palmer was. What Palmer said in that interview, might as well talk about more now. We can talk about teams in a bit, but that response in that interview, I don't know if you guys saw it on Match of the Day and stuff, but that's about as perfect a response as you could put. I'm as someone who's a psychologist or has worked in sport in the past. That is as good a response as you could want from someone who's not been playing well for a long time, especially someone who's that young. Like what he said, what he did on the pitch, and then what he said afterwards about just like realizing, he was like, I just realized, I'm young. I'm not going to be invincible like I was for 18 months. That's the way it happened, and then it's just about working hard and just, it was basically a form of acceptance, which is really key in like psychology and sports psychology in terms of accepting what has happened and what can happen in the future, and therefore approaching it a different way. And he just couldn't have been any more perfect. So it fills me with confidence for Cole Palmer now for the rest of the season, to be honest. So I'm all over that in the next couple of weeks. The question is just whether I go there a week early. It's hard though, isn't it? It's hard to take a Palace player out.
I think so.
It's hard.
Yeah, I've got to say, you're turning my head on Palmer though, because I hadn't considered him really for the run-in. I'd gone a bit cold on him myself.
Well, I knew you guys wouldn't like the transfer either, so I was tentative about saying it.
Well, I wouldn't say no. I hadn't thought about it at all this week. No. Obviously, next week is a different kettle of fish, isn't it? Because against you got so it's similar. I know the people. It's weird that people have talked quite heavily about the Spurs fixture in 37 for Aston Villa, but they haven't really talked about the Manchester United at home fixture for Chelsea. I mean, that they come as a little bit of a pair, really. So it's well worth kind of having a look. I mean, we saw what Brentford did this week, So yeah, I think the interesting debate for you, I don't think it's a question of whether you should bring him in. I mean, it feels like a really good argument you put forward there. It's just that this week, that's the. We don't have Crystal Palace's numbers up there, by the way, but I'm pretty sure they are. I'm trying to think what it was now. I think it's something like it is probably going to be 1.6 or something like that, but I haven't got it around.
I mean, Sarr's such a frustrating player, isn't he? Because looking at his numbers and stuff. I mean, if you we're probably on the wrong. We should be probably on the teams here, shouldn't we, Rich? But never mind. We'll just go.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
It's all right. It's my bad because I'm just basically waffling.
Oh no, you mean your team? Sorry.
Oh no. I'm just anyway. It's fine. I'm just saying that Sarr. I mean, I was looking at his numbers. If you look at the last 10 weeks, I know I'm picking samples out here, but if you look at the last 10 weeks, right, Sarr is top of all players in the Premier League for non-penalty expected goals involvements, and then it drops a bit because obviously they had that terrible patch, Palace. Remember where they suddenly, it was like in the double, wasn't it, or something? Didn't they get beat 5-0 and then 4-0 or something stupid, where they just completely fell off a cliff? So even despite that, that's how high his numbers have been for a lot of this, especially second half of the season. I think now, like obviously, it's picked back up again. The last 4 weeks, he's something like third or fourth for non-penalty XGI, and like Richie said before, he got over 1 expected goal involvements again on Monday. But I'm like, what's this guy doing? Because I don't think I've got a single point from him. I might have had an assist. I've had him for about 7 or 8 weeks, and he got that brace in the cup. But he's putting up numbers, and I know it's variance, blah blah blah. We and that's why I'm probably going to keep him for Spurs because back against the numbers at your peril sort of thing. But Jesus, like the guy is frustrating to own. He's just putting up numbers every single week and getting absolutely nothing for it, and it's like, yeah. So, I guess though, Jossy, if you've got him on the bench, I guess a lot of people have got Sarr bench this week. Is that right? Or what about you, Rich?
It depends on a couple of factors, but yeah, he is probably the most likely player to get benched if I brought anyone in. Yeah.
Would you fancy him over Mateta?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Sorry, would you fancy him over Mateta?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Yeah, same. Just for the minutes.
I think most people would disagree with this mine though, Jossy. So, but
yeah, it's a lottery. Variance will hit.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a tiny bit clearer when after the European fixture might help us out a little bit as well. I'm just going to talk very quickly before our teams about. It's very small, this screen, so I'm just going to turn my own one up. But assistant manager, because some people are on it. I know Matt Bugsby, who was in the chat earlier, was interested in this. All I will do is just ask you broadly for like who would be your top 1 or 2 picks for this week. Let's assume that is 36 through to 38, because I think that's obviously it's the last opportunity and that sort of thing. My feeling before I ask you your opinion is that ideally you don't want to have to pick anyone where you're going to be chopping and changing too much in this particular spell, because I would imagine most people will want to have a transfer for the final day minimum, to be honest with you. No one really wants to go into that with changing a manager. So with that in mind, realistically, I think if you're going for someone quite safe and has got both sides of defensive and attack lined up, I mean, it is probably one of those top 2, I think, on that score realistically, because you can get returns at both ends. We was having a bit of a think, weren't we, before we went live, as to who might be someone who could accumulate a little bit of a bonus. There are not many options. It is pretty tough out there. I think, I'm trying to remember, I think Vitor Pereira, does he have 1 bonus opportunity? I'm trying to remember who it was.
I think he has none now.
No, oh, sorry. Actually, no, I remember now. Bournemouth with a 1. So Bournemouth have an away game against City sandwiched between 2 quite good fixtures. So that's not a terrible shout. But Jossy, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it's pretty uninspiring at this stage now with the assistant manager. I just had a quick look. I think I'd probably be tempted to go. Last week I'd have gone with Pep Guardiola and just held it for the 3 weeks. Half tempted to say Thomas Frank now, just for the potential for a few goals. Hopefully they probably win the remaining 3. I don't think you can really chase, but I do really like your shout though for a potential 1 table bonus on Iriola.
But yeah, I think the good thing about Bournemouth as well is that almost no one has more than 1 of their players at the moment. Maybe I'm wrong. And people are really keen on them for the last week, but will they even get to bring them in, because they might go for someone like a Saka or something like that? So
yeah,
it's quite
and you
nice.
Could get a lot of goals.
Yeah, they're the highest projected goals, aren't they, for the last week? So it's quite nice, that one. Danny?
Yeah, just trying to process it all. I'm just thinking in terms of sort of the meta play, and I'm sure people know this, but I'll say it anyway. But it's absolutely heightens, the importance of rolling this week if you can, in terms of the players, and strengthening your position for next week, or whoever you bring in this week should be considered. I'm assuming most people have got 1 transfer or maybe 2, because don't forget, I mean, the thing with the assistant manager is, so first of all, in terms of thinking about the managers, I like what you said as well, Rich, in terms of, I would probably want to go, we're probably missing something here because we haven't really looked at this enough, but I do like the look of Iriola a lot, because you've got that, you play in terms of the second week. I mean, he's got Villa at home this week, which I don't like as much. So I would be looking to go for maybe a swap somewhere and maximise the potential of it with it being such a powerful chip. But if you get him for City, that's a really nice fixture that's around the cup final. Is table bonus. I think Jossy said earlier that it will definitely be table bonus as well. I've not double checked what that is, but I think Jossy said that it will be.
Well, Bournemouth have got no chance of rising. It's just basically as long as City don't drop this week and they're at home to Southampton. Well, they're playing Southampton. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Of course. So very likely that it will stay table bonus, and then obviously it's nice to keep it on them because game week 38 they've got Leicester at home. So, and don't forget when you activate the assistant manager chip, you don't use a transfer, do you? You activate the chip and you get to choose free who your manager is. So, like you said, Rich, really you want to leave it on them or just have one transfer next week. So you could potentially pick someone this week and have one transfer to take it to someone like Iraola next week. Go for the table bonus and maximize it. But as I say, really think hard about what that looks like for you next week and where the captaincy is going to be. Because I say, like you said, captaincy is really tough next week. There aren't that many options. There are certain players that I want or that you want, we want, that are going to require transfers. So, you don't want to be taking hits. So it requires being a bit savvy, I suppose, and being happy with your team this week. It'd be quite nice to activate the assistant manager this week and roll, because a lot of people can roll this week, and we do have good players. Like we said, I know we don't have Wissa. A lot of people don't have Wissa and Cunha and all that, but we do have Mateta and Sarr and Rodgers and players who are good, very good players who could easily return this week. So it's one of them where just, like prioritize that chip, because the assistant manager chip is a ridiculous chip, isn't it? I mean, we all got I think we all used it on pretty much the same managers and got like 55 to 60 points. So,
28.
Oh, did you? I thought you had a similar.
No, I got a slot back to back.
Sorry, I've just realised I probably just really annoyed Richie because I thought he did the same as me, and I've just remembered that he did Arteta for no points, and he'll be really annoyed.
I got slot back to back, and then I did McKenna for 1 point, I think.
Okay, so sorry, I got
a
lot of points from that, and I was just totally annoyed both of you. But anyway.
Yeah. That's fine.
Prioritize that.
You got Glasgow.
Yeah.
Honestly, how unlikely was it? Graham Potter has won 3 games since joining in, what was it, like November or December or whatever it was.
Insane.
And he won 1-0 at Arsenal. I mean, what the... Just one quick thing. I'm just going to pick up on this. Please don't put your AM chip on Ivan Juric, because he has actually left the club. I don't know. I don't know. I just noticed it there, and I was like, I'm sure they changed their manager. And I was trying to think. It's like Simon Rusk. For those, that feels like a quiz answer in about 10 years' time. That's going to be worth a lot of money to somebody. But Simon Rusk is your man if you want to go there. And he's got a nice table bonus game this week, actually, against Manchester City. So feel free to go there if you want to go down that line. Talking of being happy with our teams, as Danny mentioned, I don't know whether this is a current photo, Jossy, but it looks like you've been swimming.
That was last week, getting out of the pool. Yeah.
I'm quite lucky because I get to think of Jossy on most tube journeys, because David Gandy, the male model, is on virtually every tube carriage going, which is quite handy. But there you go. Yeah, interesting. Actually, your team is a sufficiently different from ours. Either of us here, rather. This week and generally, you got Martinez, Wan-Bissaka, Bowen, lots of people that we don't, neither of us own. Talk us through.
Yeah, the defence is a little bit of a challenge this week. Obviously, Guardiola and Munoz very happy with. QER has been dubbed to the final bench. I am in 2 minds whether I might choose to play Bradley at home to Arsenal, because I have a feeling that we may start him now and not start Trent anymore, or maybe not till the last game of the season. But it's a tough game anyway. I'm not expecting you guys to keep a clean sheet away at Man United, unfortunately. But I know that he's got attacking potential. So to be honest, maybe Wan-Bissaka is perfectly fine there. Then across the midfield, I've got our friend Kevin De Bruyne, Mo Salah, Umo, and Bowen. So very happy with that. And the 3 strikers we talked about, Mamouche, Mateta, Isak. I am going to back Martinez this week as much, because raise up against my own club, Liverpool. And I don't fancy either to get a clean sheet, but I think Martinez has the slimmer chance. And then we're looking at Salah on the bench as well. So it's just that the decision really, do I replace Mateta with Wissa? That's a team that can easily just be rolled. Captaincy, at the moment, you can see it sitting on Kevin De Bruyne. It'll be between him and Boomer.
Are you? Would you welcome notes?
Please bring on the notes.
Just quick words to give Danny a moment to think about that. I mean, Wan-Bissaka. I've never actually. I was just thinking. I haven't seen many teams this season with 2 starting West Ham players against. Especially against the. A team like Manchester United, where usually you'd avoid that fixture, right? But those are probably the 2 candidates for the player of the season as well. People have, I do think people have, from the outside, might not have recognised just how good Wan-Bissaka has been this season. He's really is quite. I mean, to me, he's easily player of the season. There, he's been absolutely ridiculous. He's not looked the same player at all. Which often happens with players that leave Manchester United, as Danny will know. But he looks kind of reborn. He's so capable on either side. Looks good going forward. It's not, the finesse isn't quite there. I think it's fair to say he's not a top 6 player. Let's really from that point of view. But he's not the kind of guy who just man marks people out of the game anymore. In fact, no West Ham player can man mark anyone out of a game, sadly. But he's been really, really impressive. Not FPL related, sorry, Jossy.
That's fine.
I think you're being a little bit harsh as well there, with is he not a top 6 player? I'm so happy.
Oh, I mean, going forward, sorry. Yeah,
but I'm so happy for Wan-Bissaka as a United fan, because I think all United fans love Wan-Bissaka, because obviously he was a great, he was a really hard worker, but he was, defensively, one-on-one, it was unbelievable. It's a number of times you put Wan-Bissaka one-on-one with the opposition's best player, and they had to give up. The number of times they had to swap sides, whether it was Salah, whether it was one of City's wingers, whether it was whoever you can think of, the number of times they had to give up and switch sides because you got no chance against Wan-Bissaka one-on-one. Yeah. And obviously, one of the drawbacks was he didn't do enough going forward. So to see him now at West Ham being so attacking, and like you say, he's not quite got that finesse, but what he's doing, he's a fantastic player, and now we sort of wish we had him back almost.
Yeah.
So
honestly, if we could have like another 4 or 5 of him in the team, West Ham would have finished sort of comfortably, 7 or 8 places higher minimum, because he's got the energy that the rest of the squad lacks. So I think that they've been the oldest squad in the Premier League for now 2 or 3 seasons in a row. And no one seems to have noticed it, but we are, under Moyes, whatever, as though he was good, he's put together a squad that's still there that unfortunately is haggard, really, and it's so easy to out muscle them and be more energetic and that sort of thing. It's tricky for you this week, isn't it, Jossy? Because on paper you could easily roll that and be in a position of strength. It's just how strong. I do feel, though, the one thing I will say is if you do roll, I would play Sarr above Mateta. That's the rest of it. I think is fine, but that would be my thought. Danny?
Yeah, I think you can go with whatever you feel on that. Sarr, Mateta, it is tough, because it's tough, isn't it? We say that, and then Mateta could easily brace. He is obviously an amazing player. He's just had that one standout performance in the cup, wasn't he, where he was looked back to himself since the head injury. He played sensationally in the cup, but he's not done it in the league yet. But
still went off early though, didn't he?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. The one thing I would say,
did it in the cup as well.
yeah. The one thing I would say, I view that and think that you possibly generally undervaluing Kiwior. I would definitely have him ahead of Bradley, and then the argument would be more like whether you play him over Wan-Bissaka. But it's just a general. I don't think you necessarily should, especially if you are chasing 10k or whatever, because you're pretty close. Then Wan-Bissaka is very appealing, but obviously Arsenal are just one of those teams that they could clean any game. You just don't know what's going to happen. And Liverpool didn't look great against Chelsea, and that the best Arsenal is still the best defense in the league.
Yeah.
So you're still benching a centre back from the best defence in the league.
I do expect us to play a stronger 11 against Arsenal and to put a better performance. I think it's going to be more important to us than that Chelsea game. Obviously, the first game after we win the title, probably a little bit of a hangover. And I'm not suggesting that we end the season storming the last 3 games, but I feel like we'll have some fire in our belly to show Arsenal that we deserve to be above them in the league. But you're right, Arsenal have great defence, so no question.
Cool. Salah captain then. Yeah, we haven't talked about
Never
that.
a bad captain. Never a
bad captain. Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Danny, quick question for you actually. Would you rather captain De Bruyne or Salah? I'm just curious.
Let's say Salah.
No, I'd captain De Bruyne because I'd like to go for the low ownership. I do. I'm not. I do like my players who play, but I also do like potential for big jumps. So I probably would captain De Bruyne over Salah, but I wouldn't captain De Bruyne over Boomo because Boomo is ridiculous this week.
Here's my lot. I've gone for quite a radical strategy here, as you can see, really quite different because João Pedro is first bench. I know that would shock you, Danny, as someone who's put him third bench. I don't know what to say really. I mean, it's just who I am. I just don't care. Serious note. I mean, it's again fairly good team on paper, isn't it? I even think I'd be relatively happy. I'd play Livramento, for example, over some people's defenses this week. Not that I'm going to, obviously, but happy enough with that. And it's quite nice, actually. I'm really glad that I hope he's fine, obviously, Milenkovic, because stashing a Forest defender for this week feels quite nice. Jose Sarr always looked at this week, and because he could have doubled, couldn't he? And it felt like, well, I'd be happy to play him over Raya anyway, so quite pleased with that. Yeah, and it's just a case of we got this João Pedro spot, both of Danny and I, and it's just whether to enact it this week. I don't know whether I'm closer to... Do you know what? I think one thing that's clearer in my mind is that I'm quite happy now, having separated myself from one or two of the options, as in Wood. I think I've mentally kind of blocked that one out now. He's a ban for those who are in that world. Thank you. And probably a little closer to Wissa than I was, because I've been hankering after Cunha all week, to tell you the truth. But of course, it is such a... It's fine, isn't it? That's the problem. I think that's... I'm going to be waiting pretty late on this one because I really do. It could be influenced by a leak here. I'm happy with the captain. I'm not someone who really likes captaining someone like a De Bruyne, personally. But
are you closer to making a transfer than rolling?
Nah, he's closer to rolling.
No, it's the discussion has definitely opened my eyes to the merits of rolling a little bit more, I think, but I think it's very close. It is very, very close, because the good thing with someone like a Wissa or a Cunha is that you plug them in and I'm going to play them every week, so it's not an issue from that point of view. And every week going forward after this, I would want to bench one of those Palace mids anyway. The problem is, actually, I've got a kind of situation where at the moment, due to the lack of transfers, I'll probably need to play at least one of those Palace mids every week, which is a bit rubbish. Later on, I don't really know what to expect at 37, but obviously 38, you'd ideally not play them, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Just touching on the captaincy, because this is something I had spotted earlier, and I was going to mention Boomo. Against the relegated sides this season, home to Southampton, 14 points, home to Ipswich, 15 points, away to Southampton, 19 points, away to Leicester, 14 points. There's only one of those games where he's not hit 14 plus.
Yeah.
So I think the armband's going back to Boomo.
Yeah, quite appealing, isn't it? It's just the knowns. I don't like I don't
And
like
he's a bit of a
funky
flat track,
captaincy,
isn't he?
so, yeah.
I'm just wondering for people with triple captain, like I'd be very tempted to triple captain him, to be honest. It's a bit boring. So maybe there are more exciting picks, and to be fair, there probably are actually in terms of ownership. So maybe I wouldn't, but objectively, if I was in a really strong position, if I was like top 10 in the world and I had triple captain left, I would be very strongly considering Boomo this week.
So let's go over to Danny's team.
Yeah, not much to say because I've already talked all about it, and it's pretty much the same as you, Rich. But the question for me is you guys are talking about strikers, which I could do the same. I could do João Pedro to a striker, and probably need to think about that more as well. Actually, probably, in fact, definitely need to think about that more as well.
Would it make Palmer more difficult?
Would it make who?
Palmer more difficult.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. So I just had a quick look because I hadn't done this yet, thinking about next week as well. Because Palmer will be coming in. So it's just whether it's this week or next week. And I just had a look. And I think if I did Sarr to Palmer, I can afford Pedro to Wissa with 0.1 left. But I can't afford Pedro to Cunha. So I can actually get Wissa and Palmer, and I'm guessing if I sold Marmoush, then I could get Cunha or Wissa, but there's only 0.1 room there. So in my mind, it's been. I mean, there's a big difference between going in my position, going to striker and Palmer this week, and it's actually why there's almost no chance that I'll go for a striker this week, and that's because Palmer is definitely coming in next week. So by either rolling or bringing Palmer in this week, I don't have to worry about the transfer next week, which could be very important because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know who's going to get injured. We don't know what, anything could happen. And that transfer could be hugely important. So if I get a striker in this week and I'm saying that I definitely want Palmer next week, well, my transfer next week is already gone. That's a booked transfer with only one transfer, which is not nice at all. I don't mind booking a transfer when I've got 2 free transfers, but I'm not booking a transfer when I've got 1. So that's basically why a striker isn't coming in for me, unless I guess we get a leak that Marmoush is not playing, and then I'm probably forced to do that, which won't be ideal at all.
Yeah, you would be.
Assuming that Marmoush starts, my question is roll, which is probably, I don't know, 60, 70%. Or I could do Sarr to Palmer. And it's just such a weird thing, isn't it? Because it's really annoying because Sarr has a great fixture, but we're all putting so much faith into Sarr. You as well, Rich, if you roll. We're all putting so much faith into this guy who is putting up the numbers, but hasn't actually got any points in like the last 12 weeks. And so it is the classic loss aversion, isn't it? It's the classic loss aversion, psychological foible that we're all dealt with, where it's like, how much will it hurt me if I sell the guy who's done nothing for 10 weeks and then he's plays Spurs and he scores a brace?
Yeah.
And that is really difficult to deal with. But objectively, for me, Palmer is a better pick this week than Sarr, because Palmer is the second best FPL player in the game. Sarr isn't even close to the top 10. He's on penalties. He's playing well. Chelsea are playing well. Newcastle haven't got Joe Linton. He's a really good pick in my mind. I know it's not a great fixture, but Palmer is like a huge proportion of Chelsea's goals, whereas Sarr is a winger who's not really doing anything, but he is putting up some numbers. So I think it's a pretty close conversation. And I think it probably is sensible. It's probably sensible and suboptimal to roll. So that's where I'm at. I'm a bit torn.
Can I ask what your plan is for João Pedro then? Are you just waiting until he comes back?
No, I just don't have a plan for him because I don't need to worry about him, because I just need to worry about what's in front of me this week and next week at the moment. So if I get Palmer in this week or next week and that's my only transfer, I'll have 2 free transfers in 38. And that's what I want.
That sounds nice.
That's what I want. So I could bring a striker in this week and have a Wissa or a Cunha and have 1 free transfer in 38, which is fine as well because they've got really good fixtures and they're great players. Or I can just get Palmer this week or next and have 2 free transfers in 38, and I'd like that in 38. I can do whatever I want, and I can look at Bournemouth players against Leicester. I can look at Wissa. I can look at Cunha. I'd like to go into 38. It's been a long time, to be honest. I can't remember the last time I went into 38 with 2 free transfers. I don't know about you boys, but
same.
Because of the nature of the seasons these last few years, which is what I've said so long, I've hated so much. We've always had these double game weeks, the wild cards, the bench boosts, and you end up going into 38 with a mishmash of a team that you bench boost 3 weeks prior that got no points, that totally failed, and you've got 1 free transfer to choose that one player that you want. And last year, I was like, didn't pick Mateta, who scored a hat trick. I want to go into 38 with 2 free transfers, really, and just be able to just have the freedom of the land and just, just feel really happy in the last game week and have a push at like top 1K. So, yeah, cool. That's where I'm at. What are you thinking, Rich, with that smug grin on your face?
No. I'm just listening and interested. That's all. All of that logic checks out fine. I was curious to see what you were doing, because not many people were in our situation with João Pedro, and of course I think to people who have just tuned in and look at the teams, it's one of those reasons why you should never. Okay, you can do whatever you like, viewers. It's absolutely fine, but ideally don't just unwittingly put your team out on Blue Sky or X or whatever it is and say, "What should I do?" Because it would obviously just say, "Well, do something with João Pedro," wouldn't it? Like, it would be, there are strikers out there. It's your weakness in your squad, so to speak. Go and do that. And ideally, if you have to talk to anyone, just go talk amongst your sort of trusted circle. Nothing wrong with that at all. We all have people that we like to bounce ideas off of. But this is why, the long form explanation, looking over 3 weeks and so on. I think it is. Again, it is obviously, you mentioned about your rank situation as well. Like, mine, for example, is one of those things where, yes, I know I don't know, but I am aware that I'm not in the 1K. I'm also aware that I'm very unlikely to be a horrible rank either. So it's perhaps that does play on a few things. Okay, I'm just going to line up a couple of questions before we go towards the end. Anything else you wanted to add about that, Jossy?
No, not at all. I think this discussion has really made me consider strongly how valuable that role transfer would be. It is. It's the fear of it sub, and then Wisher goes and returns an 8-9 pointer, and just feel like that's the potential. But the 2 transfers will be really powerful, particularly when we get to 38. Would be nice.
I think the weird thing is, right, with 38 in particular, is that you don't know what you're going to use them for yet. Whereas, of course, this week it's fairly apparent to you that we can talk about Crystal Palace, but you would rather own Wisser or Cunha than Mateta, right? Like, that's fairly obvious, I should think, for any of us here. It's that you don't know, but there is always something that crops up. There just always is, isn't there? And I know everyone's sitting here now thinking, "Oh, I might get Saka in for Southampton away. That would be nice." Oh, and Bournemouth, they've got a lovely fixture as well. But for all we know, I don't know, Salah gets injured or someone that Wisser, for example, there's an announcement in the press conference before 38. We're gonna, now that we're out of European running because we lost the last game, we're gonna make sure we give people in the squad a real chance, and Thiago plays. You don't know, do you? That's the problem, is now and you don't know then. But I also know that you're not afraid of a cheeky hit, Jossy. So.
I just look back actually when you said that you don't normally have 2 transfers going into the final week, because I keep a record of my game week histories, and 2 years ago I did have 2 transfers that I rolled into the final week, but a couple of years earlier I actually took a -12 on the last game of the season.
There must have been prices involved. It must have been able to bank some money.
I was at 17k, and I think I just went big roll of the dice to go for 10k.
Was that to get David Silva in and captain or something on his last?
Possibly. It was 21-22 season. I ended up dropping to 22k, so it didn't work. But hey, no guts, no glory.
That's hilarious. I love the fact that you keep your transfer history. That's incredible. The Jossy spreadsheet. You can just refer to it straight away. You need to show us that one day because that's incredible. That's hilarious.
Sure.
It's yeah, no, that is interesting. I'm not very good at keeping records of stuff like that. To be honest with you, that's quite interesting that you've done that. I do think there's something weird about hits on the final day, aren't there? You know, because there is that odd thing of, well, it doesn't really make any sense. But occasionally, I remember having a situation where you wouldn't have a starting player, and maybe you can just about justify it to get, I don't know, like Kane on the final day and that sort of thing. So occasionally it does happen. I'm going to run through a couple of questions before we sum up. I'll see if I can bring them up. Matt Bugsby, if you remember, is on assistant manager. Why not Nuno for 36-37? They need wins, and at least one of the opposition is bad enough.
Yeah, I just think I don't personally like the idea of getting on a team who look like they're on the downward spiral and they look a bit nervous. And then, you know, alongside that, they're also a team that doesn't typically score many goals. So at least with the AM chip, you sort of you're trying to back goals and clean sheets as well as wins, aren't you? So the idea of getting on a team that's a bit nervous, that's scoring 1 goal max a game, it is a good fixture this week. It's fair. It's a fair shout because that is, I guess that is the standout fixture this week. But then, it's that or Brentford, isn't it? So like what Jossy said, I prefer the Brentford shout because it's a similar fixture. Whereas Brentford, you expect them to possibly score 4 goals. So it doesn't appeal to me personally hugely. I don't know why, but yeah, I'll be looking. I would always look for the assistant manager bonus possibly. I said all along when we played the AM chip, I think that's the way you play the chip. You absolutely look for and prioritize the table bonus. And I don't know, we probably won't have the chip next season. Hopefully we don't. It'll probably be a different chip. Yeah. But to me, it's there to be played on the table bonus and go for that opportunity. So.
I think if you can swing it, the moves, because I know that they might have talked about Forest already. You could, Forest to Bournemouth next week seems like quite, for 2 fixtures, for the last 2 fixtures seems like quite a nice route if you want to go that way. So you get Forest and then the Bournemouth table bonus and then Bournemouth versus Leicester. So you get double Leicester basically and a Man City away. That's quite an interesting. It's quite an interesting route. Or you could just go straight with Bournemouth, as I've mentioned, if you really want transfers elsewhere.
Yeah, but then if you're making that jump, as Danny says, I just feel like you don't expect Wolves to put 4 goals past them. It's Leicester, so it sounds crazy saying that, but they just feel a little bit.
That's about the 3rd time tonight. Joss has referred to Nottingham Forest as Wolves, isn't it?
I was going to say, what is going on? I'm sure I've heard that a couple of times.
You keep saying Wolves instead of Forest. I don't know why. Some random combobulation.
I apologise to Forest fans everywhere.
It's late in the Dubai in comparison. Yeah.
I've got no explanation for that.
A few more final wrap-up questions. Our good friend Alex Ball, who's here to join us many weeks, is all right, fellas. Just woke up. Where is he? He might be. I think he's in New Zealand. I might be wrong about that. Just woke up, so I'll listen on my morning run. Question for you: if we get news that KDB is starting, would you sell Saka to him this week? No.
Absolutely not.
But. Jossy, do you disagree? Sorry.
No, I agree. We
Okay,
do.
cool. And he also has one line. He asks Danny, who would you bench if you did Pedro to Wissa? I don't think Danny is necessarily doing that, but who would you bench if you did have Wissa in the João Pedro spot, I suppose?
Actually, that's a good question, isn't it? Because I don't really thought about that because I've got Sarr in my head as someone to sell rather than Rodgers, but I guess I would have to bench Rodgers instead, away at Bournemouth for my team.
Yeah, I was thinking that because obviously I need to look at all of everyone's teams because of SKLW and so on, and I was hoping you would put Rodgers on the bench for whatever reason. So yeah. Well, yeah, this is what I do. I have to secretly spy on everyone's teams. I guess that's it, probably. I don't really think there's anything else. Lots of people are going to... Oh, yeah, Alex Ball is in New Zealand. There you go. That, not only do I need to know everyone's teams in the SKLW, I also need to know the locations of all of our listeners.
Yeah, hello hello to Sam as well, who's, you know, he always comes into the chat. He said that he's going to listen to it when he's at work now or something. So yeah, Sam, good on you for joining us as always.
Yeah, no, thank you very much indeed. And a few nice things about Jossy in the chat as well. Well, there was a go on Jossy from Steve.
That's FPL Fairy.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Steve.
Nice as well. And indeed do, because what often it's quite useful, even when we stop recording, which will happen in just a moment, but you know, if you are watching it back and you want to put anything in the kind of main chat, so to speak, that is quite helpful for us to like and comment and all that kind of stuff as well, you know, so that we can hit 1 million subscribers by next season. We're at only about 990. Don't worry, a long way. Yeah,
we're a few short.
Yeah, just a few short. There you go. Unfortunately, but there you
go. We just need one of us to get to World War 1. That's just, you know, that can be the goal for next season. Get to OR1.
No, that'd be good, especially if it's me. That'd be terrific. Yeah.
We'll all be sitting there in the mini league knowing that you're ranked #1 without you knowing.
I haven't decided on next year's. Well, I'm pretty sure someone would have told me by now.
I do so.
If it was this, I mean, I know it's not happening, but yeah, next season that'd be fun, wouldn't it? I mean, a shout out to someone else who doesn't check their rank often, anyway. Our friend FPL Mikey, he's having an absolute stormer this season. You know, occasionally you come across a manager who just makes the right decision every week. You know, it just seems to be glittering for him at the moment, the Midas touch. So congratulations to him after his big money win last year as well. He won some money on Found Team. So the man, you know, go to him for advice. Don't talk to us. Yeah. There we go. Okay, well, I should let you enjoy your evening, Jossy, and indeed Danny too. A bit more of an evening ahead of you. But yeah, good luck with your decision. It's quite difficult, isn't it? None of us are completely set, I would say. That's, you know, it's not one of those weeks where you're like absolutely certain what you're going to do. So we could do with a bit more news and that sort of thing. What will happen, of course, is that we'll get sucked into watching, you know, Brentford goal reels or something, you know, or rewatching Cole Palmer turn. I'm trying to think who he was up against. Was it Simicast or was it on the other side? Yeah, but doing pretty well in that last fixture as well. Cool. Okay, we'll love you and leave you, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, guys.